We all know how Marineford ended. Ace dead, Whitebeard dead, a war the Marines were never supposed to let become a legend. But what if the crew that arrived that day wasn't the one that ran from Eni's lobby? Imagine this. The sky over the bay tore open. Not a ship crashing through waves, a ship crashing through air. 60 tons of oak and steel launched clean over the wall on a burst of compressed water. Sails snapped taut, deck angled like a blade coming down. The Thousand Sunny hit the water in an explosion of spray that swallowed the nearest Marine platoon whole. 3 figures were already standing at the rail before the ship finished settling. This isn't the crew that fled Eni's lobby anymore. 2 years apart, training under legends, then Egghead threats the old world government never planned for. What steps off that ship isn't a rescue party, it's a Yonko tier crew making an entrance. Luffy didn't shout. He didn't need to. The haki rolled off him before his boots hit the ground. Marines mid-swing simply stopped, weapons clattering from slack hands, bodies folding to the sand like puppets with the strings cut. Not a shockwave, a decision, made for 8,000 people at once, and none of them had a say in it. Sengoku's head turned first, then Kizaru's, then Aokiji's, slower, colder, like he already knew what he'd see. Akainu didn't turn at all. Whitebeard felt it before he saw it, a tremor under the tremor of his own failing heart, something old in his blood recognizing something new. He'd felt this kind of pressure exactly twice before in his life, once from Roger, once from himself, decades ago in his prime. He turned toward the Sunny, ignoring the fresh ache clawing up through his ribs. He didn't need Luffy to say his name. Well, Whitebeard says, "Took you long enough, boy." Zoro dropped from the Sunny's rail before anyone gave the order, 3 swords drawn, boots hitting sand at a dead run. Kizaru watched him come, half-lidded, unimpressed. New face. Not new, Zoro said. You just weren't paying attention last time. Kizaru's light-based attacks move faster than sound, historically unblockable. 2 years of training changed that math. Kizaru's hand rose. A beam of light cracked the air. Zoro was already inside his guard, blade catching the Admiral's forearm. Blood. Kizaru looked at his own arm like it had lied to him. Huh, told you, Zoro said. What followed wasn't a duel so much as a storm. Beams of compressed light, 3 blades reading angles a half-second early, sand fusing to glass, a support pillar erased mid-shot. Marines changed direction without orders. Nobody wanted to be near it. 20 meters off, Aokiji found Sanji waiting, ice crawling outward from his boots. The cook almost died reaching the platform last time. There is no last time. Sanji lit a cigarette off the heat already gathering in his leg. There's just this time, and this time you're picking ice out of your coat. The exchange that followed dropped nearby Marines to the ground on pressure alone. Ice walls meeting fire and a scream of steam. Visibility gone, both men fighting on instinct. Aokiji rooted the ground beneath Sanji's feet. Sanji shattered it before it set, and closed distance instead of retreating, which nobody who knew Aokiji's history had ever seen an opponent do. You're not backing off. Why would I? I've got people on that platform I haven't seen in 2 years. That's the whole math, old man. The kick that followed put an Admiral through a wall. 30 meters away, Kizaru had stopped smiling. Zoro was bleeding from 3 places, breathing hard, but still standing between the light and the platform. And every beam that missed him missed the men behind him, too. You should be tired by now. Zoro didn't answer with words. He gathered what haki he had left into his center blade and cut the beam itself. Not the man. The light split clean down its length. Kizaru actually stepped back. That's a problem. On the command platform, Sengoku's hand cracked the railing stone beneath it. 2 admirals, 2 fights. And for the first time in the history of the Marines keeping score, they were losing ground. Behind them, Whitebeard watched allies he hadn't asked for buy him time he didn't know how to spend. His chest ached with something that wasn't the illness. He turned toward the platform where Ace still hung in chains, and further, toward a small, green-nosed shape already cutting through the chaos, medical bag in hand, 2 years too late and somehow exactly on time. Chopper reached Whitebeard's side while the ground was still shaking from someone else's fight. He didn't ask permission. Rumbleball already cracking between his teeth, he pressed both hooves against the old man's chest, heavy point steadying him before the next tremor of pain could drop him to his knees in front of the whole world. Don't, Whitebeard said. Waste your strength on the boy, not on me. Shut up and let me work. Chopper's ears flattened as his examination went from routine to wrong in the space of a heartbeat. Not a wound problem. He'd trained 2 years to fix wound problems. Bullets, blades, poison, things with edges, and antidotes. This was none of that. Chopper's medicine is built for trauma and combat enhancement, not for reversing a chronic illness that's already run its course. Even Law's Ope no Mi, the strongest surgical fruit in the world, can't rebuild a body this far gone. There was nothing here that medicine, however advanced, was ever going to fix. How long, Whitebeard said. Not a question. He already knew. Chopper's hooves didn't stop moving. Running diagnostics his hands already understood were pointless. You tore off your own life support before you got here. His voice cracked. You knew. You already knew. And you came anyway. Every man dies once, Whitebeard said. I decided a long time ago I wasn't going to do it lying down. I can buy you time. Minutes. Maybe an hour. If I push everything I have into it. Chopper's paws were shaking now, and it had nothing to do with strain. But I can't fix this. I can't. There's nothing left for me to fix. Whitebeard's laugh came out as a rattle, deep and old and unbothered. He reached down, careful, and rested one massive hand on the small reindeer's head. Then don't try to fix me, son, he said. Just help me stand a little longer. Chopper didn't answer. He couldn't. He just pressed his hooves in harder, holding together a body that had already decided how it was going to end, buying seconds he knew weren't going to be enough, and hating, more than he'd hated anything in 2 years, that this was the one patient 2 years of training had never prepared him to lose. The drums started before anyone saw where they came from. Sengoku heard them first as a pressure behind his eyes, then as a sound, then as something older than sound. A rhythm the whole island seemed to remember from somewhere none of them had ever been. Luffy stood at the center of it, head down, and laughed. The world government spent centuries hunting the sun god's power specifically so this moment could never happen. A devil fruit user gaining full mastery of a will strong enough to bend the rules the fruit runs on. Awakening isn't a power-up. It's the thing they built an entire secret history to prevent. His hair turned white first, then his skin drained of color like a photograph left too long in the sun. Muscle reshaped itself into something cartoonish and impossible. Joints bending directions joints weren't supposed to bend, and the ground beneath his feet turned soft and rubbery, bouncing with every step he took like the whole battlefield had become a drawing of itself. Sengoku's hand didn't crack the railing this time. It went still. He couldn't finish it. He didn't need to. Every Marine on the platform old enough to have read the classified files finished it for him in their own head. Akainu's jaw tightened, but he didn't move yet. He was watching, calculating, the way a man calculates the exact moment a fire has grown too large to stamp out, and started deciding what to burn down deliberately instead. Luffy looked up. His grin hadn't changed at all, and somehow that was the most unsettling part of it. Everyone who's still standing, Luffy said, voice carrying strangely, like it was arriving from every direction at once. Get ready. This is gonna be loud. He clapped his hands together and the sound came out as thunder. Not metaphorical thunder, actual thunder, rolling across the bay and cracking the surface of the water in long white lines. Cannons mid-fire simply stopped working, gunpowder refusing to ignite. A dozen Marines who'd been mid-swing found their weapons had turned soft and useless in their hands and stared at them like the laws of the world had personally betrayed them. Sengoku had spent his entire career believing there was a ceiling to how much power one person could carry. Watching Luffy bounce across the battlefield, bending physics like a child playing with clay, he understood, with a cold, sinking certainty that had nothing to do with tactics, that the ceiling had just been proven not to exist. Not on their side. Not anymore. Fleet Admiral. A Vice Admiral's voice shaking. Orders? Sengoku didn't answer right away. For the first time since the war began, he wasn't sure there were any orders left to give that would matter. Jinbe reached the platform first, cutting through the last line of guards before they'd finished registering what Gear 5 meant for their odds. Ace was still chained, kneeling, the sea stone cuffs draining the fire out of him drop by drop. He looked up as Jinbe's shadow fell over him, then past it, toward the sound of thunder that shouldn't have existed and skin that had gone the color of old paper. That's... Ace's voice cracked, disbelief and something rawer underneath it. That's Luffy. It's your brother, Jinbe said, already working the cuffs, and he came a long way to get here. Don't waste it. The chains fell. In the original timeline, Ace was pulled off this platform half-conscious, saved by seconds instead of minutes. Too weak to do anything but be carried away. This time, the Straw Hats bought real time, not borrowed seconds. That difference is the whole reason Ace can still stand. Ace's legs shook getting upright. 2 years of imprisonment and a slow drain of sea stone leaving him weaker than he wanted to admit, but he stood. Fire crawled back up his arms in uneven bursts, stuttering, then catching properly. Zoro landed beside them, breathing hard, one sword still glowing faintly along its edge. Took you long enough to get untied. Shut up, Ace said, but there wasn't any heat in it. His eyes were still on Luffy, on the impossible white shape laughing across the battlefield like the war was a game he'd already decided he'd won. That's really him, Jinbe agreed. Can you fight? Ace's hand curled into a fist, flame licking between his fingers. Something in his face had shifted. Not the numb resignation of a man being carried to safety, but a decision being made in real time. I'm not leaving, Ace said. Not while he's still down there. Nobody said anything about leaving, Zoro said. Get up, Akainu's still on the field, and I'd rather you take that one personally. Ace's grin came back for the first time in weeks, thin and sharp, and entirely his father's son. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I would too. He rose the rest of the way on his own, fire climbing to his shoulders, eyes fixed on the red-eyed Admiral still cutting a path toward Whitebeard through the smoke. Behind him, Jinbe watched the boy who should have been a rescue turn into a soldier who intended to stay and fight for his father, and felt the first cold edge of worry that getting Ace off this platform was going to be a much harder argument than getting him onto it had been. Blackbeard hadn't moved from the tree line since the Sunny broke through the bay. His crew waited behind him, tense, weapons ready, but Teach himself just watched. The way he always watched, patient as wrought, letting the battlefield do the work of exhausting itself before he decided what he wanted from it. Captain, Van Auger's voice was low. We could hit them now while they're stretched thin. No, Blackbeard said. We couldn't. Blackbeard has never once in his entire career fought someone at full strength if he could help it. Ace was already exhausted from 2 years of pursuit. Whitebeard was already stabbed and dying. He hunts what's already broken. That's not cowardice to him. That's the only fight he's ever needed to win. He watched Zoro cut a beam of light in half. He watched Sanji put an admiral through a wall. He watched something white and impossible bend the rules of the world itself in the middle of the battlefield. And he smiled, slow and wide, the way a man smiles at a door he didn't expect to find unlocked. They're not thin, Blackbeard said. They're winning. That's better. His crew didn't understand yet. He didn't explain it. He'd waited 2 years for a moment exactly like this one. Chaos on every front, the strongest men on the field looking anywhere but at each other, an old man's guard finally, inevitably, going to drop the instant his sons needed saving instead of watching his own back. Blackbeard's eyes found Whitebeard through the smoke, still standing, still commanding, his sons rallying around a fight that was pulling every eye on the battlefield toward the Straw Hats' miracle instead of toward him. Not yet, Blackbeard murmured, mostly to himself. Let them win a little more first. He settled back against the tree, unhurried, while his crew shifted uneasily around him. Men who wanted a fight, led by a man who had never once needed to look strong in the moment that mattered, only in the moment after. Somewhere in the smoke, an old man's heart skipped again, and nobody but Blackbeard was watching closely enough to notice the exact second it happened. Whitebeard felt his heart stumble again, the third time in an hour, and this time it didn't fully recover its rhythm. Chopper felt it too, hooves still pressed against the old man's chest. Stay still. Please, just stay still for 1 minute. I've been still my whole life, Whitebeard said, waiting for a war I could win outright instead of one I could only end. He looked past the doctor, out at the battlefield, his sons rallying, the Straw Hats carving a path nobody had thought possible, Ace standing on his own 2 feet for the first time in weeks. It should have felt like winning. It felt like something else. This is the fact. The whole chapter turns on. Nothing that's happened today can fix Whitebeard's condition. Chopper can buy him minutes. Nobody can buy him more than that. The only choice left isn't whether he dies, it's what he spends what's left of himself on. They'll keep hunting my sons, Whitebeard said quietly. Long as I draw breath, the Navy sees a war they can still lose twice. They won't stop chasing what's mine while I'm still standing between it and them. So don't stand, Chopper said, voice cracking. Let them take you somewhere safe. Let someone else. There is no somewhere safe, son. Not for a man my size carrying what I carry. Whitebeard's laugh rattled deep in a chest that had maybe an hour left in it, if that. I already knew that before I got here. Tore off my own tubes to come find out how I wanted the ending to look. Chopper's hooves stopped shaking not because the fear had gone, but because he understood, finally, exactly what he was looking at. Not a patient. A man closing a door on his own terms before someone else could slam it for him. "Then let me help you stand," Chopper said. "However long you've got left." Whitebeard's hand found the reindeer's head again, heavy and gentle at once. "That's all I need from you," he said. "Just help me stand long enough to give my son somewhere to run to." Behind them, through the smoke, Blackbeard watched the old man's shoulders straighten with something that looked, for one terrible moment, exactly like resolve, and smiled wider. "No." Luffy's voice cut through the chaos flat and hard, all the earlier laughter gone out of it. Whitebeard had just given the order. "Straw Hat's sons, everyone, take Ace and go, now," while the path was still open. And Luffy, standing in the wreckage of a battlefield he'd spent the last hour bending to his will, had refused it without hesitation. "I can save everyone," Luffy said. "I already stopped bullets from firing. I already turned cannons into rubber. You think I can't hold this island together long enough to get you out too?" That's not the question, boy. This is the hardest beat in the whole story to land because Luffy isn't wrong. Gear 5 genuinely might be strong enough to force an escape for everyone, Whitebeard included. But Whitebeard's decision was never about capability. It was made before the Straw Hats even arrived. Nothing that happens on this battlefield was ever going to change what he already chose. Then what is? Luffy's fists were shaking now, white knuckles on a white hand. "You're just gonna, what, sit here and die because you decided to, while I'm standing right here able to stop it?" "Every captain gets to choose how his story ends," Whitebeard said. "Yours isn't finished, so you don't understand yet what that's worth. Mine is, and I already made my choice long before your ship broke that sky open. That's not fair." "No," Whitebeard agreed. "It isn't. Nothing about today has been fair to anyone standing on it." His hand came down, heavy, onto Luffy's shoulder, the same hand that had leveled half a battlefield an hour ago, now trembling faintly with something that had nothing to do with strength. "But you don't get to take a man's death away from him just because you're strong enough to. That's not mercy, boy. That's theft." Luffy's jaw worked, fighting something bigger than any admiral he'd faced today. "I don't want you to die." "I know." Whitebeard's voice softened just slightly, just for him. "But I get to decide what I spend the rest of this hour on, and I'm spending it making sure my sons, all of them yours included now, get to walk away from here instead of carrying me away from it." Ace, still standing nearby, flame guttering low along his arms, said nothing. His jaw was tight, his eyes wet, and he made no move to argue his father's order either. Luffy looked between them. One captain who'd already chosen his ending, one son who'd already accepted it, and, for the first time all day, didn't know what to do with a fight he couldn't win by hitting something. "Fine," he said, voice breaking on the word. "Fine. But I'm not running. I'm covering you until it's over." Whitebeard's smile came slow and real. "That," he said, "I'll allow." Akainu found him first. Magma fist already glowing, the Admiral cut through the retreating line without slowing, eyes locked on the one target that had haunted every strategy meeting since the war began. "You should already be dead," Akainu said. "I intend to correct the oversight." Whitebeard's Bicento met the strike head-on, stone cracking beneath both their feet. "You'll have to get in line, boy." He didn't see Blackbeard until the man was already behind him. This is the moment the whole lore Bible was built to protect. Blackbeard was never going to fight Whitebeard fair, and he isn't fighting fair now. He waited for exactly this. Whitebeard's attention split between an admiral in front of him and a war he'd already decided to end. This is his one window, and he knows it. Teach's crew hit first. A dozen blades and devil fruit powers converging at once, Squard's blade finding a gap through sheer desperate luck that would never have existed against Whitebeard in his prime. The old man staggered, and for the first time all day, didn't fully recover his footing. Blackbeard stepped through the opening his crew had bought him. Old man. His grin was wide, hungry, the grin of someone who'd waited years for exactly this arrangement of pieces. "Hand it over. You've wanted this fruit longer than you've wanted anything," Whitebeard said, blood at the corner of his mouth, still standing. "You're not getting it whole." He didn't try to win the fight. There was nothing left in him to win it with. What he did instead was drive the last of the Gura Gura no Mi's power inward, not outward. A final, deliberate act, tearing something loose inside his own body, rather than let Blackbeard take it clean. Teach's face contorted, the transfer arriving wrong, incomplete, scarring something in him that would never fully heal. He staggered back, screaming, half the power he'd planned for missing entirely. Even now, Whitebeard said, voice barely above a whisper, you don't get to decide what you walk away with. Akainu's magma fist came from the side. Too late to matter, too late to change anything. Whitebeard took the hit standing, the way he'd promised himself he would, unwounded on his back, exactly as he'd chosen. He didn't fall until his heart finally stopped, choosing to keep beating. Across the battlefield, Luffy felt it happen before anyone told him, and for one terrible second, the drums of liberation went silent.